Should not get rid of it completely.
Yeah.
I think it's a teaching tool, like I said in a previous podcast, but it's a very, very small piece of your training. That's it. It serves a certain purpose, and then we don't do 10,000 uchikomis a day. That's what they used to say.
Yeah.
10,000 uchikomis a day or 1,000 uchikomis
So
a day.
you do think I think one of the criticism from Hanpan TV guys is that traditional Uchikomi teaches the wrong mechanics. Do you not agree? Like,
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shintaro Higashi Show with Peter Yu. A lot of stuff has been going online about like rethinking basics with the Uchimata, with the Hanpan guys, and thank you very much for responding. And it'd be nice to do a Korean American collaboration. I'm not Korean, you're Korean, Peter.
Yeah.
But like to do a collaboration between the Americas and the Koreas.
yeah,
You know
I
what
feel
I
like Korea is a judo juggernaut
Yeah.
and grappling juggernaut in general. Like we produce a lot of good wrestlers too, but I think because of the maybe. And for a lot of different reasons, it gets overlooked.
Yeah.
Probably language difference and proximity to Japan, maybe, which
Yeah.
is more popular in the Western Hemisphere. But yeah, it'd be great. I'll be happy to play the bridge, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll just get a trip out of it. I'd
Yeah,
love to
that'd
hang
be
out with you
awesome.
in Korea, man.
Yeah, that'd be great, right? We'll eat some
Yeah.
barbecue.
Yeah, barbecues.
Yeah.
Fish and everything. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So they basically called into question like the current teaching methodology of this static uchikomis
Yeah.
that are
yes.
done in a classical
yes.
way, right?
And then we made a response video, and someone did like a TLDR, too lazy to read, and that
I
person
didn't-
nailed it, right?
Yeah,
It's a teaching
on Reddit,
tool.
right?
Yeah, I can't remember
Yeah.
what he said, but it was like he said it's a teaching tool. A lot of the stuff
Yeah.
that they criticized about me was taken out of context, and that's pretty much what it was. So I want to kind of clarify like what the context of entire judo and grappling and where static uchikomi
Yeah.
and stuff may fit to give people a better idea.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then this thing is a very nuanced discussion about basics and things like this, because what they did with clipping all the stuff and then the clippable segments of what I said, what they said, it doesn't paint the whole picture, really. It's just kind of a
Right.
snapshot. It's like an EKG in the medical world, It's like a freaking 20-second snapshot of what your heart's doing throughout the course of the entire day.
But you have to look at the whole profile of the patient, like medical history. That's right.
Yeah, and you need a Holter monitor for 2 weeks to know if you actually have
Yeah.
what percentage aphid burden you have and all this stuff. I went through that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the
So
idea of this
yeah,
episode.
so let's talk about it. Okay, so then let's what is the context for it? Like, do you think you still need static uchikomi that's been taught like that traditional way?
I think we should not get rid of it completely.
Yeah.
I think it's a teaching tool, like I said in a previous podcast, but it's a very, very small piece of your training.
Yeah.
And I
So
think-
what's it good for? Yeah.
Teaching basics, the very, very beginner piece. That's it. And there's a point of diminishing returns for the uchikomi.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
very, very finite amount of times you can do it to kind of understand the mechanics, and that's it. It serves a certain purpose, and then we don't do 10,000 uchikomis a day. That's what they used to say.
Yeah.
10,000 uchikomis a day or 1,000 uchikomis
So
a day.
you do think I think one of the criticism from Hanpan TV guys is that the static, or the traditional uchikomi teaches the wrong mechanics. Do you not agree? Like,
Yes and no, right? If you don't,
Yeah.
if you have a brand new person
yeah,
who's never done judo before, and then okay, this is the mechanics of the throw where the person gets off balance and you're trying to put your hips underneath them and then throw them just to kind of get them understanding, right? Because you're taking out what the uke is doing, resistance, movement, anticipating their reaction. You're taking out all these things, hand position, things
Yeah.
of this nature. What happened the previous exchange? Weight, tall,
Yeah.
height. You're taking out all these variables, right? So because there's too many variables. So you
Yeah.
take out completely the person's absolutely neutral, and you have this human form. And if you pull your hand like this, there's a theoretical space. And then if the
Yeah.
person's stiff and their body's rigid, and then you remove their center of gravity away from their base,
right.
and then you create a fulcrum underneath their hips, and then you can rotate them over. That's how the guy gets thrown, right? But
Yeah.
let's just say, for example, you get a unathletic, not so coordinated, 30-year-old accountants that never did this sport before. I always use accountant as an example. I don't know why. But now it's like, all right, here's the real mechanics when the guy's running this way or running that way, or here's the backstep Uchimata.
Yeah.
Or, when you do Ouchi and they resist backwards, you don't need to create that off balance with your left hand because you're already leaning this direction. All you have to do is prevent that hand from retreating, right? Now all of a sudden you got even more of a confusing thing. You know what I mean?
I do agree with that assessment too. Yeah, I mean, I kind of expressed that opinion in the previous podcast too, but it's like I bring golf up because they use golf as another example of like a sports that does things right in some sense. But I think they kind of gloss over the fact that in golf, same things happen. Like you go to the range, you do the static swing with the perfect lie. Like everything is perfectly flat. Grass is not overgrown around the ball, and then you just practice a basic swing. And when you go out to the field, that's not the case. You never get the perfect lie. That's why golf is hard because there's so many variables, like you said, just like grappling. And I think when I watched the video, I didn't think that was a good example for what they're trying to argue. So everything, I think static, I agree that traditional way of teaching the throws is valuable in some sense.
Valuable in some sense. And I don't want to repeat myself too much from the last episode. But even like the boxing, like there was a video of Floyd Mayweather making fun of someone, jabbing with their hand down. Yeah. And then they clipped in Floyd, throwing the jab and then dropping his hand, But it's like, he could do that. And it's different. It's kind of, it's a whole, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yes, the basics never fully go directly over. It's like coding, right? Everything you do in your training or your PhD isn't exactly what happens in the real life. Running a business is the same freaking way. To get an MBA, look, I'm actually wearing this shirt. And while you start to get an MBA, this is what a business looks like. Every business has a business plan, and 90% of the time, that's not exactly how it happens. You have to pivot. You have to take on new shapes and forms. So that's the idea behind it. What I want to talk about is where you should put your focus on the training.
Yeah.
And then what are the pieces of grappling, period.
Yeah.
Right?
All right. So that's the one piece. The traditional teaching methods have a place. So what else do people need to focus, in your opinion?
Judo, I think it's grip fighting and then positional fighting. I think that's one of the two main things, because without those two things, you can't throw anybody.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you watch anime and someone knows about like chi or whatever it is or superpower thing and they discover this power. Yeah. Right? It's like that. When you've done judo long enough and you discover this power of fighting for position.
Yeah.
And in boxing, it's the power of managing distance. If you boxed and you're going against a guy who's never boxed before, just learning the distance and staying out of range, jumping in range, staying out of range is enough to beat them. And it's kind of like that, right? So it's grip fighting, positional fighting in judo. For wrestling, it's hand fighting.
Yeah.
Right?
And positional fighting too.
I mean, yes, positional fighting. Like if you're locked up chest to chest, like what's the dominant position, things like that. So that's one piece of it. Right.
Yeah. I think for me that was the biggest leap I took, like from, through my judo journey, and that's when a lot of the throws started working. It's not I mean, of course, I learned the traditional way. We're going back to Uchimata, traditional way of doing the Uchimata, and then I also learned that the competition variant of like flaying the elbow up and whatever. But I don't think that was ultimately what gave me the ability to execute those throws. It's more the the grip fighting and the positional fights that puts me into the right position to actually. I think the throwing mechanics gets too much like emphasis maybe. Well, it is important, but it's not as once you advance in levels, I don't think it's that important.
Yeah. So this is the thing, right?
So to me, yeah.
If the person's completely relaxed, letting you do everything, fully cooperative, giving you like a stiff base to kind of work yourself, and then molding themselves to be the perfect shape for you to lift and throw the person, right?
Yeah.
You could only do that certain time until you've mastered it. But if you can't do that, you can't do anything else. You can't throw a resisting partner. That's the thing. So you master that. Now all of a sudden, you're very good at grip fighting and positional fighting. Now you could attack Uchimata whenever you want. And then sometimes you lose your balance. And then the sleeve hand, you're losing your balance, so you let go and put your hand down.
Yeah.
Okay, so my balance wasn't good. So now you make these adjustments, but you have a lot more shots on goal, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you're able to attack without getting countered as much.
Right. Right.
So you're able to attack, looking for different entries, you're trying new things, and now all of a sudden, you're not playing this game of from Uchikomi to Nagekomi,
Yeah.
where you're just doing the entire throw.
Yeah.
But now you're working, entering into that leg inside leg position, and then working the different lines of finishes.
Yeah.
Whether it's like coming back out and going Ouchi to the weak side, or coming back out going Ouchi and going crossbody Ouchi, right? Going Uchimata, then going Harai, or going Uchimata, running crossbody Ouchi, and then clipping the Sotogari to the far leg. All these different opportunities kind of open up.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
So what are the best ways to actually train for that, you think, in your opinion? Like, because so for learning the mechanics, you can argue that Uchikomi is a pretty good way to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Or moving Uchikomi, static Uchikomis, Nagekomis. But how about these situational things, like the grip fighting and then the positional fighting?
So I think grip fighting, positional fighting, you could just do without the risk of throwing, right? No throwing at all, just fighting for grip fighting. And, you see the best USA Judo programs like Jimmy Pedro's and stuff, they do it. All right, guys, we're going to grip fight for the next 20 minutes. Go.
Man, that's a long time for
a long time. Your fingers get messed up, And there's a lot of different adjustments you can make, right? So if you get out gripped, stay in that position for 10 seconds, and then you let the person work out of it, or let the person gain back the position, or you could break apart and then go, right? And you could focus on putting your first hand on first, or trying to parry the shoulder and then putting your hand on reactively. There's all these little games that you could play. Start with two hands on, try to take one hand off. See, so you develop sort of that skill, and then you add new things to it, like, hey, now you could show feints. Now you could touch the feet for dashi attacks. So then you could touch the feet, cut the hand, circle. You know what I mean? Grip break. So now you're doing a little bit more actively. You see what I mean?
Right. Is that the famous popular ecological approach?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, like ecological approach. You give them specific goals.
Yeah.
And then you let them play it out. So you're not giving like, this is what you do. You put your left hand here, the sleeve goes back, you punch that hand in, and you teach some of these linear sequences. But a lot of the times it's like, okay, right versus left. Person who puts the first hand on the collar kind of generally determines inside or outside. Okay, we're just going to play sort of a game. Touch the gi first, right? Touch the hand on the lapel. Don't go too fast, and then go at a pace where you can kind of give yourself feedback and play fight a little bit. So now all of a sudden you're just trying to touch the lapel on the hand, and little by little you start realizing, I can pull back out of distance and come back in and touch the hand on the lapel, or they're coming here consistently. I'm going to try to block it and then put my hand on. So that's a little bit more the ecological approach, as opposed to like me specifically tell them, like here are 9 different ways to put the hands on, which is most of the time useless. It's really, really useless if you teach that and then expect them to do it in randori full throttle.
Right.
Because now all of a sudden you put the biggest variable, danger and personal safety, sort of in the mix. Now all of a sudden you're not really doing anything because you're scared, and self-preservation kind of takes over. You're not really in a learning environment anymore.
Yeah. So you can kind of show them some sequences as suggested. You could do these things, but not that you have to do it.
I like this. Here's some ideas.
Yeah, here's some ideas.
We're gonna enter inside leg position. We're gonna start Ochi position with the leg threaded in. Okay, ready, set, go. You're going to try to stand up, and eventually you're going to fall.
Yeah.
You're just going to let me fall. But you're just giving good reactions, right? You're just giving me softball problems. Hey, and then you're going to let me. So it's already predetermined who wins. And Glick kind of gave me this idea. Glick was like, hey, it's predetermined who wins. You're going to lose. This is your turn to lose, so there's no ego.
I see.
Yeah, right? So now when a black belt's going with a green belt and then they're doing the drill, they fall. It's not that they got taken down. He was supposed to let the guy throw him anyway. Right. And then you're just trading wins back and forth. So now all of a sudden, you're good at gripping. You're good at positional fighting. You can enter into this position, and now you're getting better at the inside leg entanglement position. My leg is threaded, and then it's like ready, set, go. I'm cutting back. I'm going over here. And then whenever you put that foot down, I lost balance. I wasn't able to keep my balance on my left leg. Right. So then you just kind of keep at it, and all of a sudden you get very, very comfortable standing on one leg, having that inside leg position, cutting back to one side, cutting back to the other side, and then trying to gain a little bit of hand position while doing it, and putting your weight on that opponent, and this learning kind of sort of becomes natural.
Yeah.
Because no one's gonna get slammed. No
I
one's going to
see.
get slammed. We know there's no ego. We've taken ego out of it because I win, you win, I win, you win. Or it could also be like, it's my drill for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You get taken down every 30, 40 seconds. So we just consistently get more exposure to the position as opposed to, and this is deliberate training, like Malcolm Gladwell said in his book. Like, you ever read that book about the deliberate training?
I've only read the what's it called, the famous book about 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell.
So
Yeah.
he talks a little bit about this in another book that he wrote. I think it's
Yeah.
called Peak, right?
Peak. Okay.
And the great example was this: high backhand in tennis.
Uh-huh.
All right. So everyone's forehand's usually better than the backhand, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
But the high one's very tricky.
What's the high backhand? Like when the ball comes in
High, and then you have to hit a backhand to
Oh,
your
and
weak
then you
side,
jump.
very high, right?
Yeah.
So like a little bit higher. So now
Yeah.
all of a sudden, how many shots are you exposed? How many times are you exposed to that exact stimuli when you play a thing of tennis? If I play with you tennis every single day for the next 2 years, how many times did I really come across that shot?
Not
Maybe
much,
every
yeah.
time it came, I ding it and it goes that way, that way, that way. Someone could teach
Yeah.
me how to do it. But if I'm not exposed to that stimulus over and over, I'm not going to really
Yeah.
learn. It's going to take me forever to learn it just playing,
Yeah.
right?
Right,
So,
right.
all of a sudden now you're my coach. You say, all right, we're going to make you hit the high left-hand backhand over and over every single day for 20 minutes straight.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden we're playing tennis and it comes at and I can nail it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like music. I get
Yeah.
stuck on this part of the piece. You don't play the entire piece.
And you keep repeating
You
that
just repeat
little,
that one little
yeah.
spot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if
yeah.
you look at the entire course of what happens in a judo match, hand fighting, grip fighting, hand positional stuff, you're entering Uchi Uchimata, and now you're getting there. Now you're only working on the finishing portion, or you're only working on the hand positioning. You're only working on sort of entering the timing, and then you're segmenting each one of your trainings.
Right,
You
right,
can't
right.
do any of that shit if you have no idea what the throw should look like or feel
Yeah.
like because you've never done it before. So that is kind of like the whole thing behind my argument for I think these guys
That's
are
true.
wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
I see. So then,
But I like it. I like it that they're thinking that way.
yeah, I think it's a good question to ask. I mean, I certainly had that question throughout my judo journey, like trying to figure out why I can't do certain throws. But do you think so there's this, okay, you gotta know the basics, you gotta just know how the throws feel like, and then you add in all this grip fighting and positional fighting component. But do you think how about the argument that's going around, not just from the Hanpan TV guys, but like teaching the mechanics more in the competition way? Like, is it just a part of the big picture? Like, do you see any value in that? Like actually teaching people to perform throws the competition way, so to speak?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because there's a resisting opponent, and they're going to resist in different ways. Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the times when you enter into a big, massive Uchimata and they defend it, it's what happens after that, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of a different type of a finish versus entering in for Uchimata and then anticipating their reaction. So you're doing it in sort of in another way.
Yeah.
So you could definitely teach these things for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then that kind of gets incorporated into the drilling sort of, I don't want to say ecological approach, but like these drills that you do. You see what I mean?
It's the same thing as, they're basically what you just described with the high backhand, like how to learn how you backhand, you know? Like, you learn the backhand the traditional way, but a lot of times that doesn't quite, well, you're not going to get the perfect backhand anyway. Same thing with Uchimata. Yeah, you learn the traditional way, but that's not going to happen that often. So you have to train it just like depends on the need, I guess. I mean, I think all these training methodologies have a place. I guess the biggest gripe, even I think all of us have, is if a gym where they just make you mindlessly perform
that's definitely
10,000
Uchikomis.
Yeah.
You know, Uchikomi, we do like, all right, guys, I usually say like 3 sets of 10 for static Uchikomi, and then move on to like
just
moving
to like a
Uchikomi.
warm up.
Just do sort of like this flowy sort of attack this, attack that, and then I'll give him pieces like, all right, making a foot attack and then cut a hand, right? Make like a circular attack and then try to clear the lapel hand, things like this.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, man, like, look up Backstep Uchimata by Shintaro Higashi.
Yeah.
Look that one up. I don't teach it the way like this, you know?
Yeah.
There's many different ways. And then even like, I think some judo mat lab thing, Uchimata's taught with like wedging the elbow underneath and
Yeah.
the wrist is higher than your elbow. But if you look at all
Right.
the competition, the elbow is higher than
Flare
the
up,
wrist.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
yes, of course, when you're showing it in a fundamental position, you're upright and you're facing the person.
Yeah.
In that case, it's easy to wedge your elbow and have your wrist higher than your hand, right? But if they're defensive and their hips are back, and then now all of a sudden to off balance them forward, you don't need to pull so much. You just kind of
Yeah.
like push, and then as they lean back, you go. And now
Yeah.
it's very difficult to wedge that elbow underneath the armpit, right? So
Right,
now all of a
right.
sudden the elbow goes up and the head gets stuffed, you know?
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
taught this before also. There's so many different ways to enter a technique, so many different variations, but what happens a lot of the times on the internet is one person teaches the basics, everyone teaches the basics.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now all of a sudden there's very little amounts of videos that deep dive into sort of the finer nuanced
Right,
stuff.
right.
And you know, I've done videos like micro judo, how to grab a sleeve, what's the difference between a low sleeve versus high sleeve. Bless you.
Thank you.
There's nuanced stuff that's very, very detailed. Like it goes over the heads of most people. So in that
Yeah.
way, yes, the very, very fundamental, this is the actual throw, is still worth something, you know? Not as much as people think, though. See what I
Yeah.
mean? There's
Yeah,
a place
I
for
think-
it. It's a learning tool, period. Yeah?
I think, yeah, I agree. And then I'll say, like, you know, I've never actually, I don't even remember when you actually demonstrated like the traditional way of Uchimata during class.
I've never taught it that way, really.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, you just.
I'll do
yeah,
it.
man.
If it's all white belts, mostly yellow
Yeah.
belts, they've never done it before. And then I
Yeah.
always say, this is what you would do in a completely unresisting opponent in a neutral setting.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't even do right versus right for Uchimata. I go right versus right, but they don't have a hand on the collar. They rest their
Yeah.
hand on the forearm.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You know how
Yeah.
they do that? So that's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
neutral because all the person doesn't even have a right-sided grip.
Yeah.
And their stance is facing you in a even neutral
Yeah.
step. Not even a staggered step, but like a normal step facing you. So now
Yeah.
it's almost as if you have a training dummy just standing upright in front of you.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So now, how are you going to put them in a position where their hips are further away from their base, and then they're leaning forward, and then creating that space underneath? You flare your
have to
elbow
pull
up
it,
like
yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
I always mention, this may not look like it in Randori because your rear delts are doing most of the work. It's a very small muscle.
Yeah.
You know, it's a
Yeah.
very small muscle. But if they're not resisting, you could
I
use
mean-
your rear delta and off balance them forward like this. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But all these nuanced things kind of goes away when you're sort of teaching judo in a 1-minute segment on the internet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those videos, I mean, you made those videos back in the day anyway, like
Yeah.
very early on, like when you were building up your kind of like your repertoire, I guess, of
Yeah.
your videos. But yeah, I mean, I think these are all good points. Hopefully, people got more clarification. I think
Yeah.
the reaction video, some people even thought that Shintaro hadn't even watched the video, but he was literally watching it while we were
Yeah.
recording it. So yeah,
Yeah.
and
And he
which I
did
figured
accept my challenge for Randori,
I know, yeah,
which means we got to go to
Exactly.
Korea now.
Yeah, we gotta go to Korea. I'm gonna hit them up soon, and
send
to
them a
make that
message.
up. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's you know, the ecological sort like kind of a thing, and you're only training a certain
Yeah.
segment, you know.
Yeah.
And I give this example for jiu-jitsu. The person who wants to stay in seated guard, person who wants
Yeah.
to make the person play supine guard. So now the
Yeah.
game is for me to put their back on the floor so they're in supine
Yeah.
guard. You know, so the person playing seated guard, don't sweep them, don't go for submissions, don't wrestle up. That's not the point of this goddamn game, okay?
Right,
The
right.
only goal is for the person on bottom is to stay in seated guard, and the only person on top is to put the person back on supine guard. And now all of a sudden,
Mm.
right, you have two people not figuring anything out, essentially, in the beginning. So now you give
Right.
them tools. This is what it could look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hand fight, push them back, you know, pull their head down, push them back, make it look like you're going to make upper body grips or grab a leg and then pick up their legs and then bring their back. So now you're only working that. You're not going into a pass right off the bat. Once you accomplish that goal, you just go right back and play that same game, right? So you're only working on that portion. You see what I mean?
And I think this, if you start teaching this way, it kind of helps students come up with their own games later on. You know, when they have encounter their own problems in their games. I mean, I've certainly did that. Like for example, so you know, one good example I have is when I was adding the left side also Togari, you know, now it's like one of my Tokui wazas for you know what it is. When I first saw it, I saw it from a Chinese player who won the bronze, I think in Rio or Beijing, whatever. And then I had never done on the left side Osotogari before, so I had to start from the static. Like I like literally drill static traditional way of Uchikomi. Then I started slowly incorporating like in the mini games, and I'll ask people to, hey, can you stay like this position so that can work? And then slow one by one, piece by piece, it became my essential part of my game. I think that's kind of what it is. Like when you start off and you just have no idea how this throw is supposed to look like, the traditional way is a good way to just build up that familiarity.
Yes, 100%.
Right. Just and then you can then, like Shintaro said, create games and situations and ask people for drills, and then you can start slowly incorporating into the main game.
Beyond like green belt, man, you should only do like 3-4 sets of static Uchikomi just to kind of get. I use it like sort of a way to get my mind ready. You know?
Me too.
When you're in comp and then you kind of have your like sort of
jitters,
and you're getting into the thing, and you know, even just showing the Uchikomi basics and just pounding in and entering in, and then going kind of sets the tone, sets the mood. People see how crisp you do those basics. You know, it's like the scales and music. You know. Right.
You just if you're a professional like guitarist, or you know,
can you play the guitar without playing the scales every day? Yes. I can play a couple of chords and sing some songs over it. You know what I mean? Can I play the scale throughout the thing and all the different frets? No, I can't do it. But there's people that can and people that can't, that can also play at a very high level, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. You know, it's a learning tool, and you use it as you may. You know what I mean? Some people take Adderall to study. Some people take testosterone to get jacked. You know, like it's like that.
It's a tool. I think judo. I think especially judo has, because of its has some like traditionalist subculture with subcontext within it. So I think these traditional methods tend to get overemphasized. But I think it's good that we're having this conversation and modernize the sport more, so that more people can learn it quicker. You know.
And let's thank our sponsors, Peter. Those guys are amazing. So you can take that away.
Jason, Levon, Joe, and Drew. Drew's got a company, Hakuin.ai, and if you have a business, mom and pop shop, or Fortune 500, you have customer churn, and Hakuin.ai lets you analyze that churn so that you can reduce it, hopefully. So thank you for our sponsors. You can also sponsor us on Patreon. Link down below. And give us suggestions, and I'll keep this conversation going.
I want to try something. Ready? If you guys listen this far, and if you guys are watching on YouTube, I want you guys to comment. Now, this is not for the algorithm. Like, this is real, true feedback on how we can make this product better. Maybe we cut in clips of the video. It's a lot of effort. You know, and I don't know how we can do it, but maybe there's ways, right? Like, for instance, like when we're talking about a specific thing that we're talking about, backstep, Uchimadas, and that, we could cut that video in, and maybe a little bit more visual.
Dynamic.
Product. I don't know. If you guys are listening this far, you guys are definitely, you know, the people who we want to cater to, right? Not the people who listen for 5 minutes and bail out and then give their criticisms like, you know, whatever. So if you guys listen this far, especially if you're watching it on YouTube, please give a very good, you know, now that I've prompted it, I am going to read that comment and take it into consideration. And maybe we'll have a private conversation too about how we can make some of this stuff a little bit better. You know, it's 2025, so
New Year's resolution.
It could be a nice time to kind of revamp this podcast. You know,
sounds good. All right, thanks for listening, guys, and see you guys in the next episode. All right.